Okay guys, wanted to do a real quick intro. What I'm going to show you today is going to be an intro to programming of the DMR 878 UV2 Plus from Bridgecom. It's an Anytone radio. I made a little mistake at the beginning of the video. I was looking at my call sign and I actually spelled the whole thing phonetically. Instead of saying zero, I said Oscar. And so I know that I wouldn't do that normally. So it is Kilo Zero Foxtrot Yankee Romeo, not Kilo Oscar Foxtrot Yankee Romeo. Anyway, more to follow, and so you'll see the video. Make sure that you hit subscribe, hit the little bell to get notified whenever I post videos, and like the video and let me know what you think. All right, appreciate it. Hey guys, Ham Solo here. Mike, Kilo Oscar Foxtrot Yankee Romeo, K0FYR, and divide. So, today what I'm going to do is I'm going to show you how to use the programming software for the Anytone 878 UV2 Plus radio, DMR radio that I just got from Bridgecom Systems. And so, in it came the software and the downloading instructions and the radio, the programming cable. And so basically, I went onto Bridgecom's website and I was able to get the software, which is called the customer programming software, and the icon looks just like this one. And so when I click on it, it's going to open up the software, and it is going to have a default code plug that's going to be assigned to the software. And I will show you kind of what that looks like. This is going to open up my regular code plug, so give me a second. And so I'm going to open up the original code plug that came with the radio. No, I don't want to save this. And it looks like this. So this is the actual original code plug that comes in it. There's two default channels. There is one default zone. And there is, under the digital icon, one default talk group. And so what I'm going to show you today is how I'm going to use all the different buttons, how I'm going to go into the different areas and set the things that I set up to make my radio work. And so if I go back to my channels, I'll see that it has two different channels entered in there. They're just generic contact channels. The zone is only made up of those two channels. So zone 1 has channel 1 and 2. And then if I go back to the talk group, there is one talk group with one called contact 1 group call, and all three of those things tie together. It's kind of like a database, right? And so let's say that I want to just add a channel, and I'm going to add it based off of my hotspot that I have sitting here next to my computer. And so I'm going to click in one of the open spaces. It's going to open up this channel window. I'm going to type in a new channel. I'm going to call it Hotspot Parrot 9990. And this is the Parrot repeat on brandmeister.com. And 9990 is the actual channel name. All right. Receive frequency for my hotspot. I'm using the Colorado band plan for hotspot frequencies. And so one of the approved ones is 438.62500. And I'm going to use that for both transmit and receive. And the mode is simplex because it's basically the receive and transmit are on the same channel. It is a digital channel. Transmit power I'm going to set to low because I'm only transmitting from my radio to the hotspot. It's less than 10 feet away. Everything else I'm going to leave alone. So permit always, not in a scan list, no APRS is on. It's not analog, so nothing down at the bottom applies. As far as the contact here, when I click on that button, it's going to have the only contact that's in the whole radio or in that code plug, called contact 1. And so when I double click on it, it implies it right here. There's my radio ID and call sign. or basically they're tied together. Color code for most hotspots, most people leave it at 1. You can set it to whatever you want, but just always has to be the same. I have mine set at 1. It does use slot 2 though when it does the transmit and receive. So on your hotspot, slot 2 is always what I have selected, or what they told me to select. And so basically I've just created a channel. So I've got a title, got the channel frequencies, it's simplex, put on low power, it's digital, my radio ID, color code, time slot, and it's in a contact. And we hit OK. Whoops. And so now loaded in here in the channel list. Alright. So if I want to add that to that zone, because everything has to be in a zone if you want to hear it, right? I just click on the zone tab, double click on zone. You'll now see it's got parrot over here. It's got the channels that were already in there, and I just highlight it and right click it over. So now it's in zone 1. Okay. Go to the contact group. Again, I didn't have to do anything to this. It was already a group or a contact that was a talk group that was added. I would like to show you this down here though, radio ID list. So this is where you put in your actual radio ID that you get off of radioid.net. So here's mine. There's my name and call sign. And so that's what tied into this channel over here. When I type in that radio ID and call sign, and it shows here on the radio ID, that's tied to that number that's in the radio ID list. Right? So that parrot is set up. Now if I wanted to test it, I'd basically just unplug my, well, I need to write this information to the code plug, and so I would select whichever COM port my radio was hooked into and hit OK, and then I would hit the icon that's the arrow with the little radio symbol, and it says write to radio. Do you wish to write this to radio? And I'd hit OK, and it would write it to the radio. And so then once that updates on the radio and you can see it and that's entered in there, then you basically could just try it out. Test parrot K0FYR test. Test parrot K0FYR test. And so it programmed into the radio correctly. It's hitting the hotspot that's right here next to my computer. And I got the response back. And that's pretty much how you would add a channel. Okay? Now, if you wanted to add a lot of channels, this is going to kind of suck. Unless you already had a pre-done code plug. And so I reached out to one of my amateur radio club members, and he does code plugs for certain radios, and so I just gave him the information on the radio, the model number, and so forth, and basically, you know, he goes into a programming software like this, and he inputs the model information. Hey, here's your model. He'll have to change his frequency to amateur US mode, and that's going to say what the receive and transmit frequencies are for amateur mode, and then he'd click OK, and basically he'd load in a CSV file which is going to have all the channels that he's previously programmed for all kinds of radios. And so if you want to see what that looks like, basically I'm going to open up a CSV or the correct code plug for my radio right now, and so it's going to read that. I have that file saved, and so it's reading all the data and everything that's entered in that, and then it loads it into the computer. And so you have all the information that you need here on the computer that's based off of everything that I loaded in from that code plug. And then I made some tweaks to it. Obviously added some more channels, added my hotspot stuff, but basically it's all in here. So on the channel side, I believe there are somewhere in the neighborhood of about 670-ish channels, 668 channels right now. The ones he sent from the code plug stopped at about 657. I skipped a couple spots and I put my hotspot channels. I got about 9 hotspot frequencies that I put in there so far. If you go to zones, it's broken up into county, both analog and digital, and DMR stations, VHF and UHF repeaters for Colorado. This is an entire DMR network that's made up of many repeater sites. Got some weather channels. The FRS and GMRS zone, I don't have any use for it right now, but that is in there. And then there's a Colorado Brandmeister zone. I guess if you hit in certain repeaters, you can hit just standard talk groups for Brandmeister. I'm using a lot of those just on my hotspot. Got a public safety zone. And then there's some zones for ARES and your hotspots. Right? And so if I click on my hotspot zone, it's the default 10 frequencies we're allowed to use in Colorado. He's already loaded in here. And then I added the ones that I added down at the bottom for my exact hotspot. And so all of that is in the Colorado hotspot zone. I did go on to the website for Radio ID and downloaded the entire digital contact list as of yesterday. And so there is 197,000 DMR users that are in through the Radio ID. And so that whole entire digital contact list was written to the radio. And so I have all 197,000 digital contacts. And again, the older radios were maxing out at 200,000, so they're going to be maxed out probably within a week or two. And this one does 500,000 digital contacts. And so it's kind of the idea why I went with this radio instead of going with an older model. And so as far as the contact talk groups, he had in here about 45 talk groups that covered the majority of Colorado. And then what I did was I went on Brandmeister's website, created my own Excel spreadsheet CSV file, and incorporated somewhere in the neighborhood of about 1,200 or so talk groups. And that included a lot of regional, national, and international. So if I'm anywhere in the U.S., in any state, which I travel quite a bit, I'll immediately have several of the talk groups for those states. For example, Texas, there are the main state chats and North and South and West and Southeast Texas chats, Amarillo, and so forth. And so I have all of those talk groups already entered in there. And so if I want to go and program in a new channel, basically I'll just do a generic. And when I click on that contact area here we talked about before, it opens up that list of all of those talk groups. And so I just got to go and stroll through the list and find out which one I want to do. And let's say that I get bored or lonely and I say, hey, I want Ireland chat. And so when I click on Ireland chat, it immediately loads that talk group in there. And all I have to do is just put in my hotspot frequencies, create this channel, and then go for my hotspot through Brandmeister to the Ireland chat and that radio frequency, and I'd basically be talking to people in Ireland. And so that's kind of the idea. I am about to go to Idaho in a couple weeks, and so I loaded in a statewide Idaho into my hotspot. So when I get there, I can just set this up in the hotel with my hotspot and immediately be able to chat on the Idaho group, talk group. And so that's kind of the idea behind how you would put these in here. A lot easier having someone already have an existing code plug, that's for sure. Because if I had to do, this many channels by hand, that would, I think, be pretty bad, right? And so the only other things that I changed on here are going to be more optional type settings. And so I'll show you a couple of those. So boot image. Basically what I did was I loaded in an image so that when my radio boots, you're going to see the ham solo image. And so my call sign, my ham solo character from my YouTube channel, and that is what happens. I just write that to the radio, and so when I turn the radio on, this is the boot image, right? I also loaded in a standby picture image, and so if you want to see what that looks like, that's going more into the image files that came with the code plug software. And so any one of these folders that has the code plug software in it, and I'm trying to see, where did I put that? That should be in my downloads folder. Yeah, so it's in the D878UVII folder. And I know I've unzipped it. There it is. Sorry about that. So D878UV screens. So these are the background screens that you can have on your radio. And I want to say that mine is just loaded. I'll just open this. It's loaded with this generic background. And so basically when that's on the radio, you have your battery indicator here. You'll have your other icons and features and radios and everything in here. And then your menu buttons and list and configuration setting buttons, names will be populated here. So this just kind of overlays the background, and then it kind of separates the screen into usable areas that you can see. And that's what that one part is on the tool background picture 1. And so, of course, when I go to options, when I first started the radio, GPS, Bluetooth, APRS, and analog APRS receive enabled, OK. And that's one of the regular programming things that I did. Optional settings. This is the big one. This has all the little intricate settings that you usually do for the radio. And so when it opens up, you see that you have multiple tabs in the neighborhood of about 16 tabs. And so if you do this off of the Bridgecom University, you can see a lot of the settings that they put in theirs. I've tweaked a couple of them for me, and so a lot of this is just going to be your preference on several of the things that you want to see. One thing I will note is on this other tab, this squelch level A was set to off. So anytime you went to an analog channel, it was open squelch. So you got to have at least a number in it, and so I put a 1 in it just so that I wouldn't have to hear open squelch on any analog channel. Okay, I haven't noticed a difference whether it's really too low. It just seems when people normally key up, it opens up, and when they don't key up, it doesn't open up. And so 1's a good setting. I think that goes to 5. Yep. And so at least put a 1 there. If you want to do 2 or 3, that's fine. Analog call hold time, I'd probably set that for maybe a few more seconds. So 5 seconds is call hold on that channel, so it keeps listening in case they, break contact or whatever. But that's about all that's ever changed on this other tab for me. Digital function, this is the actual digital channel settings, and so these I changed quite a few. Group call hold time, 10 seconds. So when that group keys up, and you hear whether it's US chat or Colorado chat or whichever one you're listening to, your talk group, it'll hold that channel open digitally for 10 seconds. So if he's keying up and you're hearing the stuff and it drops out, it gives it a chance for it to rekey without you losing the channel and then just going back into a listening mode. Same with private call hold time, 10 seconds. And that's what I set mine to. I think they were at maybe 2 seconds. That wasn't long enough because sometimes people key up and they let go and they key up and it loses it already. Manual dial, group, and private manual dial. That would be if you physically enter the manual Brandmeister number into the front and key up. I have them both set for 5 seconds, and that seems okay. This one is a good one. Filter own ID and missed call. If you don't have this on, if you key up and talk to a parrot or you key up and talk to another channel, it'll actually send back your radio ID and say missed call. And so I have this on so it filters out your radio ID. So if you do a hotspot or a parrot and you're getting that received back, it won't just show that you missed a call from your own name. Okay, so that's a good one to leave on. Other than that, I don't think I changed any of these other settings. So filter own ID, and then the time frame. 10 seconds on regular calls, 5 seconds on manual dial calls. Let's do those two. Key function tab. You can do short and long press key function changes as a part of programming. And so there's a couple of them that I changed. The side button that's right below the transmit button, it's called PF1. I have it on a short key press, like less than a second press, to go into digital monitor. And what that means is it opens up time slot 1, and if you press it again, it opens up both time slots, time slot 1 and 2, as open squelch. It's basically a digital version of squelch. And so I have that set as a short key, and so I just sit there and click that once or twice. I've got both time slots on whatever frequency I'm listening to open, so in case that they have the wrong color code or I have the wrong color code, I'll be able to hear them keying into the repeater. Let's see, the key right below that on the side of the radio, underneath the push to talk button. So you have PF1 is the first button, PF2 is the second little button under the push to talk. I have it set up for nuisance delete. So when I scan a scan group, let's say all my public safety channels, and one of them trips open and it's basically just static, and I'm getting somebody trying to talk into it, but it's just static and it's not good connection, I can just short key this key on nuisance delete and it'll actually just skip that channel. And so to resume the scan, and you won't hear that one that's just locked open on noise squelch. Let's see, did I change another one? I did. This key that I did, the digital monitor, the one right under the push to talk, I have a long press, which means you hold it for over a second, and I have that one set to scan. And so when I long press it, it scans. When I short press the button below it, nuisance delete of the channel locked on scan. And other than that, I didn't change any of the other buttons right now. Power save, I don't have any power save settings set. The batteries last a really long time. So I'm usually doing about 3 days even with transmitting on this 3100 milliamp battery. Work mode. So this one I did do some changes. Display mode was set to frequency. When you're dealing with 675 channels, you're not going to remember all those frequencies. And so I do the channel, which is the alphanumeric name. And so it'll say, Colorado wide or 91 worldwide. And it says that the name instead of the actual frequency. Right? Let's see. This one here, sub-channel mode on. That lets you show two frequencies at once on the screen. So it has the channel, or the slot A or zone A, channel A, and zone B, channel B will both show. If you don't have this on, you'll only see one channel and one frequency in one zone. And back when I told you he selected the model, where he picked the UV2 Plus with the frequencies that it broadcasts on, this is where it shows up, amateur mode or professional mode. And so we're all, in theory, ham radio amateur, and so you'd want the radio in amateur mode. If you do professional mode, you can do some more commercial things and also go into some of your public safety transmit and receive. And if you are allowed to do that, you're allowed to do that. I might do that once I get done with my fire department stuff. I might be able to switch this to professional mode and broadcast on those frequencies. But that's the settings here in work mode. Let's go to the top row. Volume, I set mine to max, or I'm sorry, I set mine to 5. There's 8 volume settings. It says recommended setting 5 for normal use. Mic gain, I didn't put extra mic gain on it. It's just set at 1. Didn't do anything with my record. Didn't do any changes with the auto repeater. Didn't do any changes with the VFO scan. Haven't messed with GPS yet. Display. So a lot of changes in display. I set brightness level to 5, which is max. I have my backlight duration on for 30 seconds. You can go to always, like if you're farting around and you're programming or you want to do some testing, you can just have the light on the whole time. Again, the battery is good enough. I just have it to time out after 30 seconds and just save a little bit extra. Menu exit time, I have mine set for 45 seconds. That seems to give me plenty of time to go through the menus without it timing out and going back to a black screen. 45 seconds seems pretty good to thumb through the menus and do changes. I do have the time display on the screen. And the last caller ID, I have set on mine to display call sign. Now you can display radio ID. I don't know why you would do that, looking at 197,000 radio IDs. And so I usually have display call sign. There is the possibility to show both. I would imagine that if you wanted to manually dial that person back, you could know his talk group ID. You can also find that in the list. And so I just have mine set to display call sign. Call sign display color, that person that just called is going to be in red. Let's see. Standby character color, that's all the other side character colors. That would be like the date and time, and the menu, zone, and list, and what color code you're on, and all that is going to be orange for me. That standby picture, which is the background with the Anytone logo with the little colored bars that I showed you earlier, that's where you pick it here. Custom 1 is what that one was called. And that's, I said, yes, I want that standby that I selected. A channel name color I have in yellow. So whatever my channel is on the top, right now I'm listening to one of my local repeaters, it's in yellow. Channel B name color is in green. And that just seems more pleasing to the eye. I have it right now on the parrot, so that one's in green. And then the zone for A and B are white. And so the zone for the top one's the analog zone, and the zone for the B is my Colorado hotspot zone, because that's how I'm talking to the parrot. And so those are the changes I made on the display. Power on. I have my power on interface. Instead of putting like my name and call sign or whatever, I have it set on custom picture, and that's the one that's pulling up my ham solo logo. You can also have define default startup channels, and so you can set that to on, and that's why my radio right now has my county's analog channel with a zone with my county channel for the amateur radio group repeater, and then my zone B is set for one of the DMR repeaters that I can hit from my house, and the channel is the actual repeater. West Creek repeater is the one that I'm able to hit from the house. And so that when it powers on, it goes to these two channels automatically with my little ham solo logo. Right? So this is a very important one down here at the bottom. Set on to allow MCU reboot. If you do something to the radio and you mess the radio up, or you need to do some type of programming and you get that thing jacked up where it's hard to get into, if you don't have this set to on, it's very hard to do any type of reset to the radio because you can't get to the actual programming stuff. And so if you set this to on and leave it on, it allows you to go back to default settings, or it allows you to at least try to recover the radio and have some way to do it without you having to push a pin in it or something and re-flash the whole thing. And so you want that set to on. Okay. The last tab that I'm going to deal with is going to be the alert tone tab. And so on this tab, there are a lot of numbers. Again, I got these numbers for me off of the Bridgecom University videos that you can find on YouTube. So, SMS alerts, I have it to ring. Call alert, I have it to ring. So if that somebody calls me, private call, it'll ring or make a ring type noise. Digital call reset tone says on. And over here, where it says call reset tone, there are 2 frequencies. Alright? And those numbers are good, 1900 and 800. Now, I'll let you see what that sounds like here in a second. Talk permit. And it says digital and analog. If you have this set to off, you're not going to know that you're connecting or not connecting by sound. And so I like to have the digital and analog, so whether I key up a digital station or I key up an analog station, I am going to know that I am hitting this repeater. Key tone on. So when I press push to talk, it's going to allow this call tone down here. So first tone, 1560 Hertz for 40 milliseconds. Second tone, 1040 Hertz for 40 milliseconds. Third tone, 1560 again, just like the top one, for 40 milliseconds. Fourth tone, 1310 for 40 milliseconds. Now you have a play button here. It's not going to be in the right time frame, but listen to the tones. So when you key up, when you hit this repeater, key tone on, talk permit, digital and analog on, with these tones, with that noise, you'll know that you've hit the repeater. And so I will show you by keying up this radio on the Parrot. Listen to the sound when I key up. Then I know that I hit the repeater, or in this case, the hotspot. That's those 4 tones. That's how quick those 4 tones are. Now, this call reset tone. Remember, I have mine set for 10 seconds, so wait, and you'll hear these 2 tones telling you to let go of the repeater or the hotspot. That's those 2 tones. So I'll do these 2 or these 4 again, keying up. K0FYR hotspot Parrot test. K0FYR hotspot Parrot test. And then listen to these 2 tones. So let's go to the hotspot. There you go. So you got the burst of the 4 tones, 40 milliseconds each, and then the end of the 2 tones, 100 milliseconds. And again, if you play it like this, it's real slow. I haven't used this idle channel tone. I haven't seen the use for that yet. It's set, and I don't have it on here, idle channel tone. I think that would be annoying if that actually means that if a channel is idle, it's going to play these tones repeatedly. That would kind of suck. And so I'm not sure if that's really what that is or how that's for, but I have mine off. I do have call tone on. You heard that. And so when you hear that burst, you know that you got contact with your repeater. And then when it gives the 2 tones at the end, you know it's let go of the repeater, and you're no longer monitoring. Now, anybody that keys up on that channel, you will hear them. This is just letting you know that you let go of the repeater. All right? And so that's how I have the basic settings in this radio. Again, if I want to write this to the radio, all these settings that I would do, I'd have the radio plugged in. I would select the COM port. And when I plug mine in, it always says COM port 4 here. So I'd hit OK. And then I'd hit the little icon, which is the arrow in the radio, write to radio. And I click on it. And it takes roughly about, I'd say 15, 20 seconds to write all of this to the radio. And then the radio reboots. And then you're ready to go. And so that's pretty much it for the software. I did have to do a lot of reprogramming last night because for some reason, over here on this side where it says 1 DMR Mark WW, this was on every single contact of all 600 contacts. And the problem with that is there are a lot that should have these contacts that you saw loaded in the contact talk groups, right? It should have these names, okay? But for some reason, and I don't know if I had a programming problem, it went to only this one for all entries. And so when I was trying to key up and talk to people, they weren't hearing it, and somebody was reporting that it was showing some type of like security software or something or other, and it was basically because that contact got changed. Instead of being the ones that they actually are, it all defaulted to that 1 DMR Mark WW. This one's fine for analog because you're not doing digital. And so all the analog channels usually have this in here. But all the digital channels need to have the digital contacts or they don't work right. And so that was a little bit of trying to download this to an Excel spreadsheet, open up the Excel spreadsheet. This is an example. And open up your Excel spreadsheet and then sit there and try to redo all of those talk groups and then load that back into the code plug using import files. And it took hours and hours for me to try to get that done. And that was just an accidental oversight, or I don't know how it got changed, but it's all back to working order now. And so the radio works just fine on both the hotspot channels that I have programmed in, plus the, right now, the one repeater that I can hit for DMR. And then all my analog channels also work relatively well, so I haven't had any issues with the analog channels. These handy talkies are putting out about 5 watts, and I think on that one I have it set to 7 watts for most of my analog repeaters. K0FYR. And so it is hitting those just fine. And other than that, that's kind of the programming in a nutshell. There are, some other obviously tabs here. I have set up a couple of scan lists. The only one I really have been using is that the public safety scan list. And basically, I just put in a bunch of my local fire departments, and then the county's sheriff's channel. They've actually switched over to 800, so there's hardly any traffic on that county sheriff's office channel. But all of the VHF and UHF fire and EMS channels, they're all still good. And so that one I'm doing my scan function on. These other scan channels were already entered into the code plug that I got from my amateur radio club buddy. And so other than that, that's the software. I'll see if I can attach to the end of this a little bit of seeing the screen when it boots up on the radio, and maybe doing the key and seeing what the color on the front of the radio looks like. All right. All right, guys. This portion of the video is to show you what it looks like when I turn on the radio, and show you what it is to key it up. And so let me go ahead and turn the power on. So I got booting. Should have my ham solo image coming up. There we go. Then you'll get that on tone that I talked about. And then there's my A channel and my B channel. And switching in between the two. And so if I go to my B channel, you'll see that it's green. The zone is in white, RM Central. And again, I just changed the zone. And I'll go to my hotspot zone. And it's already on the parrot channel. And so I can change it to several different channels that are in that zone. But I'm going to use the parrot and key up. Parrot test, Kilo Zero, Foxtrot Yankee Romeo. I'm not sure if I hit it. It made the noise. Keying up on the parrot for my hotspot, Kilo Zero, Foxtrot Yankee Romeo. Keying up on the parrot for my hotspot, Kilo Zero, Foxtrot Yankee Romeo. And so it'll drop back out. Digital is still lit up. It'll make the two tones when it disconnects. There you go. And so that's kind of what the screen looks like. I've got yellow on where it says Mark 146.82. That's my local amateur radio club repeater here in the county. The zone is called Teller Analog. That's the name of the county. There's date and time at the top. I would see call signs in red where that date and time appear if there were call zones, or I'm sorry, if there was somebody that calls in. And then that was 30 seconds, and so then the screen went off. That little green flashy light on the top, that is going to be it receiving signals or it doing the monitoring of the channels. And so it's constantly looking at the channels and saying, oh, do I see something? Do I not see something? And it's listening. And so whenever that little green light flashes, usually it's pretty standard for when it's adjusting for a scan itself. And so if I were to go back and show you the radio and put it in a scan like we talked about, let's see if I can get it closer. Sorry about that. It's not focused on it. There we go. And so I have scan set up for this push to talk button on the side, right? And so if I go back to my analog channels, whoops, on the top, I'll just do it there, it'd be easier. And then I just press that button on the side for scan. And now it's scanning through my public safety channels. And so now you see the light on the top is a rhythmic green flash instead of it trying to send the signals out. And so that's kind of how that scan works. Now if it were to lock on one of those channels, I'd hit that second bottom below, and that is going to be the nuisance block. But that's kind of what the screen looks like. And pressing any button drops it out of scan. And so if I want to disconnect from those channels, the digital ones, I just hit that hotspot disconnect. That's that 4000 Brandmeister. And so when I key it up, Kilo Zero Foxtrot Yankee Romeo, and it'll tell you a disconnect.
Not linked.
And so now it's not linked to any of the previous talk groups that I have been linked on. Right? So that's kind of the end of the video. That's what I wanted to show you between both programming and then doing the actual display here so you could see it. And that's going to be all for this video. All right, appreciate it. Thanks.